Japan, 1600, October. The valley of Sekigahara sits between low mountains in the cold morning dark, and the air smells like wet grass, horse sweat, and burning pine. 80,000 men stand on one side of this ground. 80,000 more stand on the other. Banners the size of barn doors snap in the wind. War drums carry across the mist like a second heartbeat under the earth. This is the largest land battle in Japanese history, and every man on that field knows it. But this time, at the northern edge of the valley, something has appeared overnight that nobody sent, nobody ordered, and nobody can name. A shape made entirely of steel. No rider, no banners, no horse. It sits motionless in the gray light, and it hums. Can a single modern tank break an entire samurai army? Or does sheer mass of will and iron find a way to stop it? To understand what makes this scenario remarkable, you have to understand what the samurai armies of the Sengoku period actually were, not the stylized figures from painted scrolls. The real thing. Japan spent 150 years grinding itself apart in civil war before Sekigahara, and the armies that emerged from that crucible were some of the most battle-tested in human history. The samurai were the officer class, the warrior elite, trained from childhood in tactics, horsemanship, and close combat. But by 1600, they commanded armies of a shigeru, foot soldiers carrying yari spears, yumi longbows, and tanagashima, the Japanese matchlock musket, introduced 50 years earlier, and by this point deployed in the thousands. At the Battle of Nagashino in 1575, Oda Nobunaga arranged arquebusiers in rotating volleys behind wooden stockades and destroyed one of the finest cavalry forces in Japan in under an hour. These are people who had already figured out how to solve the problem of firepower and mass. The terrain of Sekigahara works against large cavalry movements and channels infantry into defined approaches. The commanders on both sides have spent decades learning exactly how to use it. The smell of torch oil and damp earth hangs over the whole valley like a low ceiling, and underneath it, the sound of tens of thousands of men waiting. Here is the honest framing before we go further. This is a thought experiment, not a peer-reviewed war game. There are gaps in it, but the core asymmetry is real, and that is what makes it worth following. What materialized at the edge of that valley is an M1A2 Abrams main battle tank, the current production variant. It weighs 73 tons. For comparison, a heavily loaded Sengoku-era supply wagon pulled by 2 oxen weighed roughly 1 to 2 tons. The Abrams weighs as much as 50 of them, and it moves under its own power at 42 miles per hour on open ground, which is faster than a cavalry horse at full gallop, and unlike the horse, it does not slow down. Its main gun fires a 120mm round at roughly 1700 meters per second. That is fast enough that the round arrives before the sound of it firing does. Effective range exceeds 3,000 meters. The longest accurate bow shot in battle was perhaps 200 meters. The tank's secondary weapons include a 50 caliber heavy machine gun and 2 smaller machine guns. The 50 caliber fires at roughly 500 rounds per minute, which is more than 40 times what a skilled archer can manage, and it does not tire. The armor is a classified composite of layered ceramics and steel. It will stop a modern anti-tank round at close range. An arrow, a matchlock ball, a sword, fire, and a siege catapult stone will not mark it. The crew inside numbers 4: commander, gunner, loader, driver. They are as human as anyone in that valley. That detail will matter later. From the Abrams perspective, the morning opens simply. Thermal optics read the valley floor in infrared. The mass of bodies on both sides registers as a dense thermal bloom, stretching nearly 2 miles across. The commander identifies the northern approach, the tightest channel between the hills, and holds position. A forward scout unit breaks from the eastern flank, maybe 30 mounted samurai riding toward the unfamiliar shape at the edge of the field. The horses are trained war horses, and they hold longer than a civilian animal would. The riders close to roughly 1,000 meters. The coaxial machine gun fires a controlled burst. From inside the tank, it is a procedural decision. The thermal image shows movement. The range is confirmed. The trigger is depressed. From the perspective of the riders, something happens that has no name in their world. The iron shape makes a rapid hammering sound, lower and faster than any taiko drum, and men begin falling from horses without being struck by anything visible, not by an arrow, not by a blade, by nothing they can see or point to. The horses begin to break. 2 riders wheel immediately, crouching low over their animals' necks. Others hold a moment longer, which costs them. The surviving scouts return to the eastern formation at a run, and whatever report they give, it does not fully translate, because the language to describe it does not exist yet. The army has never seen anything like this. The response, from a commander who has broken fortified lines and cavalry formations across 30 years of civil war, is tactically rational, given what he knows. You mass, you overwhelm, you close the distance faster than the enemy can reload. He sends infantry forward in tight formation, spears leveled, shields raised, arquebusiers in the flanking columns to lay suppressive fire. From the hillside, the math looks solvable. From inside the tank, it does not. The main gun fires for the first time, a single round into the front of the advancing formation at 800 meters. The detonation does not behave like any weapon these soldiers have encountered. It does not arc like a catapult stone. There is no warning sound before impact. The earth opens, and the men at the center of the opening are simply gone, and the men around them are thrown sideways by a pressure wave that moves faster than thought. The formation buckles. Officers shout to close the gap. They close it. The tank fires again. On the hillside, the senior commander watches his lines fold and reform, and fold again around something that has still not moved from its original position. He orders the arquebusiers to fire. Hundreds of matchlock rifles discharge in a rolling volley, and the smoke is enormous, and the sound is enormous. And inside the tank, the commander registers the impacts on the hull display as a light scatter of contacts, like hail on a roof. Not penetrations, not damage, just noise. The arquebusiers reload, some of them. Others are watching the smoke clear and waiting to see if anything changes. Nothing changes. The iron shape sits exactly where it was. The army tries fire next, because fire takes castles, burning bundles, fire arrows, oil carried forward by a shigaru, who advance at a sprint under covering bow fire. The tank's exterior surfaces do not combust. The engine intakes have filtration systems designed for battlefield environments. The burning material sits against the hull and scorches and goes out. A unit attempts a flanking approach through the tree line to the west. Thermal optics pick up their body heat through the foliage at 400 meters. The turret rotates. The machine gun addresses the flanking force before they reach the clearing. They do not reach the clearing. But here's where it gets complicated. The tank has won every exchange. It has not been touched in any meaningful sense, and it is running out of time in a way that no sword can cause. The M1A2 carries approximately 40 main gun rounds, against a force of tens of thousands that requires rationing in a way that starts to feel like arithmetic. More pressingly, the turbine engine burns through fuel at a rate of roughly 2 gallons per mile under load. The total fuel range is finite, somewhere around 300 miles of operation. There is no fuel depot in 16th century Japan, no logistics chain, no resupply convoy coming up the road. The 4 crew members have water for hours and rations for days, and then they have nothing. And the valley terrain, which has been open enough for the tank to maneuver freely, has softer ground near the river approach to the south, the kind of saturated soil that turns a 73-ton vehicle into an immovable object. A samurai commander who understands siege warfare, which these commanders absolutely do, eventually arrives at a strategy that requires no weapons at all. Wait. The Iron Demon does not eat. It does not drink. It runs on something, and that something will end. The conventional battle is decided before midday. What follows it is not. The soldiers who walked away from Sekigahara that year carried the story with them for the rest of their lives, and the story changed in the telling the way stories do. The Iron Oni, they called it. An Oni being, in the cosmology available to them, a demon of iron and hunger that exists outside the natural order. The Buddhist monks in the region began writing about a visitation, a trial sent to test the resolve of the living, not a weapon an enemy deployed, a judgment. The specific detail that appears most often in the accounts, or in the accounts we might imagine from this scenario, is the sound, not the impacts, not the fire. The sound before the fire, the low mechanical growl that reached them through the ground before their ears registered it, like something enormous breathing beneath the soil. Officers who survived described an enemy that could not be reasoned with, could not be honored, could not be shamed into retreat, because it had no honor to appeal to and no fear to exploit. It simply continued until it stopped. And the day it stopped moving, sitting cold and silent in the mud at the valley's edge with the engine gone quiet, the soldiers who approached it found something they had not expected. 4 people inside, exhausted, thirsty, human. They had crossed the valley in something that moved like a god, and they were just men.